So today's video will be about prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So here are our vocabulary words for today. First is eukaryotic cell, prokaryotic cell, cell membrane, organelle, and nucleus. So our first word is eukaryotic cell. So even though it starts with an E, you ignore the E and it's pronounced eukaryotic. So eukaryotic cell is a cell containing a membrane enclosed nucleus and organelles. So if you look at this picture on the left, it kind of looks like a green egg. Okay, the light green part is the main part of the cell and the dark green part is the nucleus. And that's what's going to keep the DNA in it. So if you remember from class, the DNA is like the brain of the cell. It tells the cell how big it's going to be, when it's going to split into two and make a new baby cell, what type of cell it's going to be. So the DNA decides if this is going to be a skin cell or a muscle cell or a blood cell. So the DNA is the brain of the cell. And it is kept in the nucleus, which is again that darker green section, which is, if you see the black line around the dark green section, that's the membrane. Okay, so the nucleus has this kind of skin around it, that keeps the DNA all in one place so that it's protected. We don't want the DNA kind of banging around or doing stuff with other parts of the cell, because then it could get damaged and that would be bad. Eukaryotic cell. So eukaryotic cells are much larger than prokaryotic cells, and they usually have a bunch of different types of things inside of them. So I don't want you right now to worry about like the Golgi body and the lysosome and then endoplasmic reticulum. Like, don't worry about all those organelles. You'll learn those in 7th grade, but just know that when you see a bunch of stuff like that, that means it's probably a eukaryotic cell. That nucleus kind of towards the left-hand side in the middle, a nucleus in pictures almost always looks kind of like an egg. So it's got this kind of bigger part around it, and then kind of the yolk towards the middle is what it kind of looks like. And again, that smaller part on the inside of the nucleus, that's the DNA is at. So our second word or words is a prokaryotic cell, which is a cell lacking a nucleus or any other membrane enclosed organelles. So remember, the word lack or lacking means it doesn't have it. So this is a cell that does not have a nucleus or any other organelles. So on the inside of a prokaryotic cell, it's going to look a lot more simple. The DNA is not protected. It kind of swims around in the rest of the inside of the cell and kind of bangs up against, the sides or whatever. Like, it's not protected at all. All right, so this is a picture of a prokaryotic cell. And again, I don't want you to worry about ribosomes and plasma membrane and capsule and plasmid and all that kind of stuff. Just kind of notice that the DNA, which is that blue stringy stuff towards the middle, it is not like in one certain area. It's kind of spread out. There's nothing keeping it from running into any of the other stuff inside the cell. So the DNA is much more likely to get damaged in a prokaryotic cell. Prokaryotic cells also sometimes have flagellum. That's that kind of whip or snake looking thing on the left, and that basically just helps it move. So a prokaryotic cell is always going to be unicellular. Prokaryotic cells are never more than one cell big. And because of that, it doesn't really have any way to get around except for that flagella. So it kind of like wiggles back and forth, kind of like a dog's tail, and then it kind of moves the prokaryotic cell around. The cell membrane is a protective layer that surrounds a cell or an organelle. So the cell membrane is kind of like the skin. It's the outside barrier on a cell that kind of keeps everything together. Okay, just like your skin on your body kind of keeps your organs inside and your bones inside, the cell membrane makes sure that everything for the cell kind of stays together and doesn't just kind of go wandering off. So on this cell, which you can tell is eukaryotic, because it has all kinds of stuff on the inside, plus that circular part towards the middle, that's the nucleus. The outside purple section, that's our cell membrane. So it's kind of the outside barrier and keeps all of that stuff inside. All right, the next word is organelle. And organelles are structures and cells that perform specific functions found in all eukaryotic cells and some prokaryotic cells. So organelles in prokaryotic cells are very, very, very rare. They do have ribosomes, which is an organelle, but that's about it. Okay, so organelles are all those little things on the inside of the cells that you maybe saw in the pictures, and they have different functions. So just like the organs on the inside of your body, like your lung takes in air, your liver filters out waste, your heart kind of keeps the blood moving around. All those organs on the inside of your body have different functions. And organelles are named that because they're kind of like tiny organs. So there are these things inside the cell. They all have different jobs, mostly in eukaryotic cells. And they kind of have just different jobs that they do. Again, I don't want you to focus too much on what the organelles are called or what they do. The main one you need to know is just the nucleus. You'll learn the rest in 7th grade. So here's another picture of a eukaryotic cell, because you can notice towards the center it says nucleus. So this is a eukaryotic cell, and there's all kinds of things around it: vacuoles, Golgi body, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, cytoplasm, cell membrane. Again, I don't want you to focus on what all these are called. Just know that when you see a bunch of them, it's probably a eukaryotic cell. All right, our next word is nucleus. It's a structure found in eukaryotic cells that contain DNA and is responsible for controlling the activities of the cell. So the nucleus contains the DNA, and if you remember, the DNA is like the brain of the cell. So we want to make sure, especially in eukaryotic organisms, because if you remember, eukaryotic cells can become multicellular. So like, for example, we have eukaryotic cells, and we want that DNA to be super protected, so it tells our cells exactly what to do. So we want our DNA to be safe, so it tells like our bone cells, hey, you're going to be a bone cell. Or it tells our muscle cells, like, you're a muscle cell, and here's what you need to do. Okay, so we want that DNA to be safe because it's super important. So here's kind of a picture of a nucleus. So this entire thing would be inside of a eukaryotic cell. So this is not the cell itself, this is just the nucleus. So you have the outside part, and then you kind of have the inside part. But again, don't worry about nuclear envelope or nucleolus. Just remember that this big nucleus would be in the center or somewhere inside of a eukaryotic cell. Okay, so now we're on to our notes sections. Make sure you write down there are 2 types of cells, eukaryotic and prokaryotic. Okay, so for now, if you get that spelled wrong, as long as I can tell what you mean, that's fine. But by the end of the unit, you should definitely be able to spell eukaryotic and prokaryotic correctly. Okay, so here's a little bit of information about us. Humans have about 100 trillion cells, which means we are multicellular. 100 trillion is more than 1, obviously. So we are multicellular, and if you remember from the Brain Pop video, if we took our cells and we stretched them from end to end, it would go around the earth about 45 times. So our cells, we have a lot of cells, because we're fairly large creatures, and we have tons of different cells, all with different functions. So we have skin cells, eyes, muscle, heart, all kinds of different cells. So this is a very simple picture of what a bacteria might look like, and most bacteria are unicellular, which means that they are 1 cell big. So these are teeny tiny, you cannot see them without a microscope. Okay, so here's some examples of other multicellular organisms. So all fungi are like mushrooms. Plants and animals are multicellular. Okay. And since they are multicellular, we know that they have to have eukaryotic cells, because those are the only types of cells that can have more than 1 cell. So plants, fungi, and animals all are made of eukaryotic cells. So we are, turtles are, flowers, fungus, trees, dogs. We all have eukaryotic cells, which means we have a nucleus inside of our cells. Okay, so we're going to fill out 2 sides of this. The first one is eukaryotic. They have a cell membrane, which is the outside around the cell. We have cytoplasm, which is like the goo inside the cell. We have DNA that's organized and stored inside the nucleus. We have ribosomes. We have membrane-enclosed organelles. We have a nucleus, we have mitochondria, vacuole, and Golgi body. So those are some of the organelles. But again, just focus on the nucleus. Eukaryotic, which is, remember, our older, simpler cells. So these could have a cell wall. They have cytoplasm, which is the goo inside. The DNA is not organized, so it's kind of just scattered, and it's not stored in anything to keep it safe. They have ribosomes, plasmids, and flagellum. So don't worry about plasmids at all. And then flagellum, remember, is that little tail that helps it move around. So here's kind of a big picture of what that page should look like with everything filled in.